You should be ending your day with as much energy as you started your day, possibly even more. That is a normal day. So many of us, that's not what happens. We get to mid-morning or afternoon and we're done. And that is not the way that we should be feeling normally.
Welcome to Play It by Your Rules, the podcast for those tired of living by somebody else's script and ready to live and lead on their terms. I'm your host, Maggie Rombach, coach, speaker, and strategist. I'm here to spark a little rebel energy and leave you with a sense of possibility. Each episode, I'll talk to leaders, adventurers, experts, and changemakers who found their way. Some loud and bold, others quiet and intentional. You'll walk away with fresh insights, inspiration, and practical tools to chart your next chapter. If you're craving more freedom, flow, and fun, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Hello and welcome by Play It by Your Rules, my call for mindful rebellion to challenge the old script and to design a work and life that fits to who we are today. And today I have another amazing guest. I'm always excited. So with no further ado, I give you the word right away, Lizette. Please introduce yourself and share us what you're working on.
Yeah, hi, I am Dr. Lizette Warner, keynote speaker, executive coach, and healthcare exec. I help people learn how to turn the volume down because I feel the biggest problem that we have is we've got such a high volume of stress and we're paying for it twice, once in the moment and once long term. And I don't think we should be doing that. Yeah.
So that's so important and such a good fit to the mindful rebellion because that's what it's all about, right? It's to become more intentional about which battles to pick, but also becoming more intentional to taking a break. So how did you get there? I just assume there's probably some of your own story that led you to that point. So tell us more.
Yeah, so I was an ambitious high performer and I spent a lot of time at work giving and giving and giving. And in the end, so I had stress in the moment, but I also learned that I had stress long term. So I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's. And when I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, I don't know if you know what that is, but it's an autoimmune disease that attacks your own thyroid. And your thyroid is the organ that it sets your hormones for your metabolic engine. So when your thyroid's not working, your metabolic engine is not running as hot as it should be. So I discovered that it results from a lot of things. It can be genetic, but it can also be environmental and stress related. And then that caused me to examine and measure my stress in the moment, but also measure my long-term stress, chronic stress. And that's where I discovered that I had been dealing with chronic stress, but the problem is because the volume is so loud for many of us on a day-to-day basis, we don't recognize. I couldn't hear that the volume of chronic stress was so high. So that's where I discovered that, my volume was high, and I've turned that discovery into an obsession. So I am obsessed as to why smart, capable leaders like myself are unable to turn down that volume. And so that's really the birthplace of my sort of rebellion story and why I'm so obsessed about this. Yeah.
Wow, and that really resonates because I guess I fall into the high performer category. And I remember the days, I made a career change already over a decade ago, but before that I was in a private sector brand management position. And, I had balance, but the problem was I had balance on such a high level. I would work hard, party hard, go running. So I didn't feel like I was out of balance and I didn't even realize I had chronic stress. but I just never stopped. I
Mhm.
just never paused. And you can do that in your 20s, maybe, but
Mhm.
also only for so long. But at one point, your body's just saying, like, hang on, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Something will break, right? Something will tell your body will set the boundary at some stage that you're refusing to set. That's typically what happens for us. And that's what happened for me. But I hear this story over and over again, right? Ambitious high performers, we we can't stop because it feels almost dangerous to stop because we have gotten so much in the mode, and that's all part of, the volume is a certain level, and we've gotten so used to it. You walk into a concert and you don't ever notice how loud it is until you walk out, and then you notice, oh, wow, that was really loud. But you don't ever notice it in the moment. And I think that's what happens to so many of us. We're caught in the moment. We don't ever notice that we're there. We don't ever notice that we're carrying around so much chronic stress until something happens. And so that's why I'm so obsessed about it. And I'm trying to help people figure that out and recognize it, and also be able to turn down their own volume. Because what I discovered was when I was actually able to turn down the volume, I was able to expand my capacity in a way that I had never been able to do before, with just working harder and harder. And that was the turning point, really.
And again, that so resonates. So because I
Yeah.
got really into mindfulness over the last 2 years, and I talk about it all the time. So listeners might already have it coming out of their ears. But the interesting bit was I did the classic one, the mindfulness-based stress reduction program. But then I did a bit more innovative program, at least here in Switzerland. It was quite new at the time. It was called Flow at Work. And basically what it does, it uses flow principles, it uses mindfulness principles, and just old school time management principles. But by mixing that all up, I realized when you slow down intentionally, when you create that breathing space, it's not just about stress reduction, it's also about efficiency. And then suddenly it becomes really, as you called it, like then you really expand your capacities. And it's just really powerful. So tell me more how you do it, like, oh, what do people come to you with, and then how do you help them, or what's your magic recipe?
I love talking about magic recipes. So, one magic recipe is actually behind me. I wrote a book called Power, Poise, and Presence. It was my first foray into things about people's nervous system. Although I never used the word nervous system in the book at all, it was about equipping people with their own recipes to show up with power in a position where they didn't have power, or poise in a state of ambiguity, or presence when they might be emotionally charged or ramped up. That was my first foray into it. But my recipe now, especially after the Hashimoto's diagnosis, is I got really big into measuring things, because you can't change things unless you can measure them. And I started to measure my stress daily. So I started to measure my daily stress, and I did that with an Aura ring, but you can do that with Whoop. I think the Apple Watch also measures stress to a certain extent. There's so many ways that you can measure your stress on a daily basis, and there are a lot of things that I measure, and those are good. But then I also have an assessment that I use to give people a blueprint, and this assessment measures 4 different cognitive areas. And I use that specifically to measure chronic stress. So you can also measure chronic stress through hormonal ways. So you can take a cortisol test, but this one is something that I like the assessment because we can repeat it, and you don't have to, there's no blood stick or anything like that. But it's measuring 4 different cognitive areas. And the reason that I love this assessment so much is that it's measuring those 4 different cognitive areas. It's telling me what someone's chronic stress level is, but it's also telling me what are areas that the someone needs to develop. So emotional awareness, is there cognitive? Usually I find when someone's has deep chronic stress, their cognitive function is lower. So things like memory, short-term memory, long-term memory, focus, planning, I can measure all of those. And those are cognitive functions. A lot of times the cognitive areas are depressed. When someone sees their numbers, then it paints a picture. You have chronic stress. The cognitive functions are also lower. They might be thinking, I'm functioning really at a high level. But then when they see their numbers, it starts to explain some of the anomalies that they're seeing in their daily life. And then the picture, when someone's chronic stress is high, typically I find their cognitive scores are low. So I don't ever work with anyone to let's start boosting your cognitive scores. Let's heal the chronic stress. And then guess what? We'll remeasure and everyone's cognitive areas start going up. So that's something that I use because it gives a dashboard. So it takes all of the intangibles that we know or we feel or we might think, what's our external volume? And it puts it as a number in front of you. So it takes it right from behind that you can't see and puts it in front of you. And then I'm able to provide someone a coaching plan. I'm able to say, here's A, B, C, and D that I think would be helpful for you to work on. But again, it's your choice. Where would you like to spend the coaching time? What would you ideally love to have? Because so many times people come and they want to get a promotion and they're struggling with that. And we do the assessment and we pinpoint exactly why they're struggling in that. And then we're able to put forward a plan and they're able to increase their emotional awareness or their emotional flexibility or their heal their chronic stress, whatever that might be, along with, oh, by the way, what ends up happening is more than often my clients get into that next role because once we've learned how to turn down the volume, we start to pick up on so many things that we're missing on a daily basis that make us stand out as strategic thinkers to everyone around us. But we miss it because our volume is so high and we don't even know it.
I really like that. Maybe you can say a bit more about this assessment and how you developed it, because you said you're a doctor, right? So are you coming in from a medical side? Are you a medical doctor, or is it more more an analytical tool? So, and did you create it? I mean, this just sounds really fascinating. I almost want to do it myself right away.
That's usually what most people say when they when I explain the assessment. So I am a PhD doctor. So I graduated from the Mayo Clinic in biomedical science or biomedical engineering, and I worked for a healthcare company immediately after I graduated. I worked there for about 10, 15 years, something like that. And I became chief science officer. So I worked a lot with things like biomarkers. It was a lot of the work that I did and a lot of imaging biomarkers. So I use a lot of that language and terminology. The assessment itself is not a clinical tool. It is not something that measures. It does flag for certain clinical behaviors, for example, ADHD, sleep apnea, PTSD, those things, but it's not a clinical tool. So I don't use it in that vein. The tool, however, has been vetted and used by hundreds of different organizations, a lot of them healthcare companies as well. And it's a tool that is available. I happen to have that as part of my practice. It's called Total Brain. That's the name of the assessment. And a lot of clinicians do use that tool. The difference about the way that I use the tool is I am one of the few people who use this tool in a leadership capacity. So I've been able to take the assessment and I do work with that assessment in order to give people their coaching plan, in order to I analyze it a little bit differently and present the results to people because the results are a little bit confusing in the way that the assessment puts them forward. But I'm actually able to put that forward in a capacity blueprint for someone. So they'll go and they'll take the assessment. I then present all of the results as a capacity blueprint for them. And so then they'll have their chronic stress, they'll have their overview of their results. I give them a debrief, but then I also provide a coaching plan. The coaching plan does not come from the assessment itself. The assessment just gives you, here are your results, almost like Aura. Aura tells you, here are your results. You go figure out what you need to do with them. So I take all of those and I tell people, or I put together, here are the top things that you could work on, right? And with actual goals, and how will we remeasure them? Because for me, it's important that we're able to measure the coaching goals. Otherwise, we're marching towards, I don't know where we're going. But once we're able to identify, hey, I want to expand my ability to read emotions better, specifically happy and sad, because I'm struggling with those emotions. And oftentimes when we struggle with reading a particular emotion, we're spending, what that ends up doing downstream is we're misreading in the moment. So we're either causing conflict or we're missing conflict. And so when we're able to pinpoint which emotions do I need to read better, and then you're able to do that, what I find is then you're saving time, you're finding conflict in the moment. Might be when you're given a presentation and you see an emotion in the room, you're able to address it right there, and saves you tons of time, saves you stress later. So even though that may sound like, it's kind of a silly thing to work on, that's one of those things that downstream it's able to save you a lot of time. So then we may mark as a measure, we will remeasure your emotional awareness. That way we're able to see that you have increased from 60% to 85%. So for me, it's important not just to have a coaching goal, but to have a measure that we're able to assess that we've hit it.
Amazing. So if I understood you correctly, so this is basically a tool that is proven available out there, and you twisted it specifically for your work.
Yeah.
And it's kind of creating a baseline, right? Because in my previous life, I worked in the humanitarian sector, and there was a lot of talk about how we measure the impact of the work we do in the field.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the challenges was also often, if you don't have a good baseline, you don't know. You cannot even tell if you made progress because, you don't have a starting point. So this assessment gives you the starting point, right?
Exactly.
The other bit I picked up and I found super fascinating, how specific that is, to say like, we work on how to better read happiness or joy or whatever. So this is really super extra specific.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it is very specific because some of it, and this is the thing that a lot of people don't recognize, is that some of us, our nervous systems are wired to pick up certain emotions and we're almost blind to other ones. And it can be eye-opening to someone. I know when I first took it, it was eye-opening to me. And then so many things started to make sense. And then I was able to start reading and practicing honing in on certain emotions. So for me, one of the emotions that I struggled with was neutral, reading a neutral face. And when I got my results, it was so, on one hand, comforting to me. And also it was just eye-opening because one of the things that I would constantly do in the morning, my son would be sitting having breakfast and I would come up, oh my gosh, what's wrong? What's wrong? And he would look at nothing. I'm having breakfast. I misinterpreted his neutral face for angry. And imagine what that was doing to my nervous system. It was causing me stress. It was causing me stress because I was misreading a primary emotion. I was spending time and effort someplace that I didn't need to spend it on. So that's a concrete example of when we know exactly which emotions to work on and you're able to work on them. Now I see neutral faces because I've worked on it, because I knew what my score was. I was able to work on it. Now I see the neutral face, and it doesn't hijack my nervous system anymore. So small that small thing, imagine going through your day, seeing neutral faces. And again, this is where the volume, we don't know that the volume is high. I didn't know when I was reading neutral faces that it was causing my nervous system stress. But it was causing me stress all during the day, and it was my mind going into, oh my gosh, what are they thinking? What's going on? What can I do here? And instead, that was a point where there's nothing wrong. You don't have to spend time worrying about it. And so now imagine what that did to my time. Now I freed up a bunch of time, and I freed up a bunch of effort, and I freed up stress. And all of that, once you free that up, imagine it's like running your car on the wrong gas. It's almost like you've put water in your tank, and you know what that does to your engine. You can't go. So when you put the right fuel in, all of a sudden you're traveling faster, your things are clearer, and you're not getting those bumps and jostles when you're driving. Things are smooth. So it's night and day, but it's important that we measure it. And so that's what I do with all of my clients. They get that baseline measure.
Wow, that's really powerful. And it also makes me think, so first of all, it's good for your own awareness and your own, like the space you have in your head and all of that. But I could imagine also in collaboration, because the example that came up for me, and I'm sure there are also cultural differences of facial expressions and all of that. But I used to have, I'm German living in Switzerland, and I had a British boss, and it was remarkable. We would go to the same meeting, we would come out of the same meeting, and I would go like, that was amazing. We had so many ideas we worked on. That's also me being biased into that direction. And he would go like, that was terrible. Everybody disagreed. So at the beginning, that led to us arguing who's right. And then after a while, we just called it hypothesis. We said like, okay, this is my hypothesis, what happened. This is your hypothesis, what happened. Let's find out. So I could imagine if you have that level of awareness that you have about how you can read emotions or where you struggle, I could imagine that also when you work with others, if everybody has that level of awareness, you could also say like, okay, I know neutral faces, you can compare notes, if you will, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
exactly.
And you also mentioned there are 4 areas of cognitive assessment. What
Mm-hmm.
are those 4 areas?
Yeah, so they're emotional is one, feelings, and then cognitive. So we talked about the cognitive, and then there is the what I like to call the gas tank. So it's the social and resilience. So there's one part now, mind you, the way the assessment puts the results is a little bit different than the way that I put the results, because I I don't use them clinically. I use them to improve someone's leadership capacity. So it's all in terms of capacity. So there's one piece of the assessment results where it's about your capacity. What is your capacity? Because sometimes people, and the other piece is that, I gave the example of the car. It's almost your engine. How many miles per gallon do you get? And then how big is your tank? And those are two of the most important pieces of the puzzle, because oftentimes our miles per gallon are might be depressed, and then our tank might be small. And if both of those things are happening, then someone is really, that's the opportunity for a huge amount of growth, right? In that moment, they come in and they're not moving very fast, and they're feeling probably really exhausted at the end of the day. My goal for my clients is you should, and this always surprises people when I say this, you should be ending your day with as much energy as you started your day, possibly even more. that is a normal day. So many of us, that's not what happens. We get to mid-morning or afternoon and we're done. And that is not the way that we should be feeling normally. When your engine is when you have a good miles per gallon and you have a large tank, then you're able, that's my goal with the assessment, right? Is in working with clients is to get them there, because when your tank is full or you have a large tank, you're able to end your day having with having as much energy as you started.
So
But
that sounds
it's those two things. Yeah.
So that sounds super fascinating. I want to dive deeper. But before we go there, something else you said before, which I thought was really interesting, I wanted to pick up on. Because you said in that assessment, you can also identify ADHD and some others. Because I recently talked to a few people that were diagnosed really late. So I think often, particularly, I mean, not just high performers, but I think often also ADHD comes together with high intelligence. So many people are late diagnosed. So in your work, do you see that come out strongly or not too much? And is your tool helping to diagnose, or maybe not medically diagnose, but at least point to, here's an area you might want to look into a bit more?
That's a great question. The tool has a number of clinical flags. And so I always tell people whenever they're flagged for anything, there's always a sensitivity and a specificity with any test that you take. The flags, I often tell people, especially there's a flag for depression, anxiety, ADHD, sleep apnea, all those things. When someone's flagged with those, it's not a clinical diagnosis. I always tell them it's not a clinical diagnosis. This is simply a flag. And I always explain which of the flags, because some of the flags are highly sensitive and highly specific. Some of them are less so. So I'm always very clear about indicating which of those the tool is really good at pegging and which one the tool is not very good at pegging. But then I always share their flags. And for example, with ADHD, it's a flag. And I often tell people, when you're stressed, your brain seems to be presenting as someone with ADHD. So, and that a lot of times lands with folks. What I've found is we'll make the recommendation of this might be something you want to get checked out, work with your physician, because what I found in working with so many clients, some of them who do go out and get that checked with their physician, they'll come back and it's made a world of difference, because then the diagnosis is made then, and they're able to have clear, concrete next steps of what to do, and it starts to put things into place for them in a capacity that they would have never known about it before. So every time that a flag comes in, I'm clear about telling people this doesn't mean you have this. It just means that you're presenting like someone who would have this when they're stressed. It could be useful to get it checked out. Yeah.
That's super helpful. Thanks. Yeah, really powerful, this tool. So let's get back to, I love the idea. I want to start my day. Now I want to finish my day with the same energy than as I started it. So, because, there might be listeners now thinking like, oh my God, I want to do that assessment, but not everybody will be ready or interested or willing to hire you right away. So what are things people could do, like some simple things listeners could do to at least keep that tank more full or arrive with a lot of energy at the end of the day?
Yeah, great question. The place where I would start is trying to figure out, what does your tank look like? What does your tank right now? What does it look like? And the way that you start figuring that out is you're taking checks during your day. How, and especially after meetings, how are you? How are you after certain meetings? You give yourself a 1 to 10. Where am I in terms of energy? When you're starting the day, where am I? We don't know because we never measure. We never know what our, imagine if we were driving around and we couldn't see on the dashboard the gas tank, the measurement of the gas tank. This is like us walking around every single day. We have no idea what our gas tank looks like during the day because it's covered. The only reason we know how much gas we have in the engine is because we have a gauge that measures it. So what I tell people is start auditing your day. Where are you starting? After a meeting, where is it? Where's your gauge now? After lunch, where's your gauge? Where's your gauge? Check during the day and keep a running log. Log yourself for about a week, or even a day. Just log yourself for a day and ask yourself, where am I on a scale of 1 to 10 today? When I showed up today, Maggie, where was I on a scale of 1 to 10? Lizette was probably at a 9 starting today. So that tells me, okay, there's room to grow. I could get to a 10. What would get me at a 10? Maybe I'll go for a walk a little bit later. After a meeting, if I'm a 6, gosh, what do I need to do in order to get myself up to an 8 or a 9? So that one little task is something that people can do. Just auditing yourself. Where am I during the day? And bringing that awareness, because you don't know what your tank is unless you're looking at it.
So really, and then do like mini corrections. So let's take myself as a mini case study. So, because I've become quite aware of quite a few things. So for instance, I did at work, we had a different assessment tool, and it measured more what are tasks that drain or drive your energy, what's good energy, bad energy. And I found out I'm really stereotypical German, really good in organizing and structuring things. Yeah. But I learned that it gives me very little energy. I actually hate it. I'm just good at it. So already that helped me. And then I got into mindfulness. So now I'm more conscious, sometimes late up morning, I know that's when my energy goes down. So rather than just taking some coffee where I basically block the sleep receptors, so I just do like a 10-minute, whatever, slow walk, meditation, whatever I can do in the environment I'm on. So I think I'm already level 1 on awareness. So what are some other things I could do or is that already enough? Because that are already some mini adjustments that you described. So first have the awareness, then you start doing some mini adjustments, like you go a walk. What's level 3?
Yeah, so then level 3 is it becomes a habit. It's so much a part of who you are that you wouldn't dream of doing X without Y. So, for example, one of the things that I do cognitively, it's super important, but also for my nervous system, it's super important, and that's to close the loop. That's something that I do after I'm on LinkedIn. What do I need to do to close the loop? And what I mean by closing the loop, for example, at a meeting, in a meeting, how do you close the loop? What were some of the findings from the meetings? Closing the loop is writing up your notes. What are your action items? And when are you going to do those action items? Making sure that they're either in your calendar or it's offloaded off of my brain. And I'm sure that I'm not going, it's not one of those mental tabulation. I'm going to keep that on top of my mind and keep track of it that way. No, I've actually made adjustments in my calendar and my tasks, or the thing is set so that I don't have to think about it anymore. That's closing the loop. When I finish my day, closing the loop is clearing off my desk and making sure that my computer's shut down. So closing the loop is automatic for me. That's one of those things that I constantly think about.
That's a great ritual.
And it's habitual.
Yeah, closing the loop ritual. Because, there's a book I really love. It's called Transition by William Bridges. And it talks more about big life transitions. And what it talks about is that you first have to mark the ending, then you could go into a neutral zone where you figure out what next, and then you can start a new beginning. And I'm more talking about in the context of big transitions. What came up listening to you is having these closing the loop rituals. It's basically doing the same thing in a micro version, but just doing it all the time, to really mark the ending, and then you can really fully start something new. So that's really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. It does a lot of things. It does something cognitively too, because we walk around all day long with so many open loops, and that is a cognitive load. It's one of those things that makes your gas less fuel efficient, makes your vehicle less fuel efficient. So the less open loops that we carry throughout a day, cognitively it does something. For your chronic stress, it does something, and it's also is relieving your nervous system of carrying another open loop. So I'm doing a lot of things with that one thing, but it's
It's
become
almost,
habitual.
yeah, it's almost like a computer that has too many programs open. The
Mm-hmm.
more programs you have running, the less it runs. And
Yeah.
then the more you shut down, it actually works. That's, I think just that insight alone, it sounds so simple, but I want to point listeners to that because I think it's so powerful. And if listeners only take one thing away from the show today, and I'm sure there will be many things, but I feel that's really powerful. Close small loops intentionally and make it a
Mm-hmm.
habit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful practice.
Amazing. So, is there anything else that you feel burning to share, linked to your method, what you see in your work, anything that might be super practical and useful for listeners?
Well, Maggie, because I've had so many clients, I speak as well on this topic of turning down the volume, and I equip audiences with a framework that they can use on a daily basis to turn down the volume. One of the things that I've been working on is putting together a turn down the volume, just free mini workshop for people where, and then from there it goes to what's your capacity? Because once you start to turn down the volume, then you can start to examine what's my capacity? How can I self measure my own capacity without the assessment? Those are two workshops that I have been putting together. One's about to go live. So if your audience is interested to find out about the volume check mini workshop that I have, I'm happy to share that. That's going to be a mini workshop that I'll have available for anyone who's interested to learn more about the turning down the volume and then expanding their capacity. So that's going to be the thing that you asked before. How does someone self measure not just your energy, but how do you self measure your chronic stress? How do you self measure your emotional capacity, your awareness? All of those things I have put together as part of a workshop that that I'm helping people with.
That sounds
So, and
great.
that's available. Yeah. So if people are interested in that
Sure,
they
and
should
I'm more
connect
than
with
happy
me.
to include that in the show notes so people
Mm-hmm.
can check it out. And I think it's a great way to get really tangible, to really understand the framework, learn some principles to, start looking at things. And you all know that's not replacing some deep coaching, but at least it's a starting point for people to get first awareness and some
Yeah.
ideas. That's great. Unless there's anything else that is burning there that hasn't been said yet, we can move to the quickfire burst question. Or is there
Sure.
anything else that? So we jump in. I
Yeah.
like
Let's
that.
jump in.
Cool. So this is one of the little fun parts of this podcast. So basically, I'll be shooting 7 questions at you, and I challenge you to answer with one word or
Okay.
one idea. So the idea is to really kind of bottom line it as much as possible.
I'll
Ready
do
to
my
go?
best.
I did it myself. It's really hard, but we'll try.
Yeah.
One belief you had to drop to live your way.
Hustle.
Hmm? A place that cracked something open in you.
A place?
Yes, the
A,
place, like a location or a holiday or
oh, that
something.
cracked something open for me. Bar Harbor,
So bad. I always want
Maine.
to ask follow-up questions, but okay, maybe on that one, can you say two more words or like a tiny bit more? What
But
was it?
yes, so I think the hustle is probably explanatory. The Bar Harbor was where I went on my honeymoon. So meeting my husband was life changing for me. I met someone who would sacrifice his own life for me and puts me before anything else, even himself. And I wish everyone on the world could in the world could experience that, because it is that has cracked open my entire world and has changed me at the core from who I was to who I am now. And the other reason that it cracked things open for me is because Bar Harbor is also known for lobsters. So it was two in one, right? You crack open lobsters. So that's the story
That's
behind the story.
beautiful. That's wonderful. So one thing you had to unlearn.
Hustle. Again, hustle.
Again.
I
Yes.
had to unlearn hustle. I think so many of us, the the thing is, hustle, it's not a bad thing. Pressure, and some people call it striving, some people call it ambitious, drive, energy, whatever that is for you. The it's not bad. It works. But sometimes we use that, especially ambitious performers, we use it too much. We overuse, there's a possibility to overuse a tool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then you're suddenly trapped in the hamster wheel and you're just
Exactly.
running.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what is your non-negotiable right now?
Oh, my non-negotiable is it, capacity. I was going to say rest, but my non-negotiable is capacity. And what that means is I sacrifice everything for capacity, because it's capacity that I'm looking for, not the hustle. And capacity means that I rest. It means that I close the loop. It means that I'm taking care of me first, because that's what's going to give me better gas mileage, and it's what's going to increase my tank. And when I have that increased tank and my gas mileage is so high, then I really can do anything and everything. It means that I go home at the end of the day with more energy than what I started with. So I started with a 9. I'm probably going to end my day at a 9 or a 10.
That's amazing
Yeah. So it's
capacity.
capacity. Hmm.
Great. So what is the boldest risk that you took and that paid off?
Oh, wow. The boldest risk was definitely myself. Definitely, I, and it's paid off in several parts of my life. So I left my first corporate job and went with a husband and 2 kids and got my PhD at the Mayo Clinic. We moved halfway across the country in order for me to do that. Again, myself, in when I left the second big corporate job that I had and as an executive, to write this book that you see behind me, Power, Poise, and Presence, to start my coaching practice, and now again to in my speaking career. So it's myself. Every time that's the biggest. And one would argue maybe it's not a risk, because I'm a sure thing. I know that when I invest in myself, I'm always going to pay off, but it always feels risky. And I understand, right? It always feels risky to invest in something where you don't know the outcome,
Mm,
and we want the safety, but I don't know what tomorrow brings. I may get a speaking engagement, right? Someone might be listening to you thinking, my company needs to hear this message, and let's book her for a speaking gig as a keynote speaker. And I might, but I don't know that right now.
Mm.
But it feels like a risk, but I invested. So that's why I said, it's myself.
And also because you were in paid jobs for a long part of
Hmm.
your career. So I guess that's kind of the safe card to play, but your current setup is maybe more risky, but also more rewarding, I would
Hmm.
assume. So,
Yeah.
wow. But it's also investment. It's the same thing, isn't it? The higher the risk, the higher the return. So if you don't
Hmm.
take any risk, then you probably also don't get the same return. So,
Yeah.
and return not necessarily in terms of money, but also in terms of fulfillment, happiness, and
Hmm.
whatever.
Exactly.
So, one word for your leadership, for your life in this chapter.
Calm. I'm saying that with a question mark because I'm trying to, is that the right word? The one thing that people use to describe me, especially after a coaching session, is calm, right? A lot of times they come into the coaching space, or I'll walk into a situation and it can be not traumatic, but tumultuous. Or a client may come in with so many things, right? Because they've got their volume is so loud. They always walk out, and it's not so much calm. I'll change the word to regulated.
Mm.
Regulated. That's what it is. Because when we're regulated, our capacity goes up. When we're regulated, we're calm. When we're regulated, and we as humans are wired to co regulate with each other. That's why when you have a leader who's chaotic and can't finish sentences, it starts to seep into the team or the meeting or the organization. When you have a leader who's regulated, that same behavior starts to seep through the organization because we as humans were designed to co regulate. So I would say regulated.
It's interesting you say that. I had a few months ago a neurodivergent consultant. So she really works with organizations in Germany and she works in that whole space. But she's on a mission. She believes co-regulation is the number one leadership skill for the next century that we all need to improve. So I guess
Mm.
that kind of resonates because it
Yeah.
really links to the nervous system.
Hmm.
We all need to bring more also into the workplace. So here's the last one. What is the ripple you hope your story will create?
Capacity. Capacity. I am, I told you I'm obsessed about one thing, and that is why smart, capable leaders feel that they can't stop when in fact they're limiting their own capacity, not just in the moment, but also long term. So I have been working on sharing with audiences my volume check framework that helps them turn down the volume. That's my keynote speech, is learn to turn down the volume. But I'm also working on the capacity code. It's the work that I'm writing from all of this work that I do. So it is, for me, it is, like I said earlier, it's capacity. The capacity is, when that is my end goal, then it puts everything else in the day in perspective. It lets me know that I need to close this loop. It lets me know that I need to go take a walk. It lets me know that maybe I need a little bit more stress in my life. Maybe I need to go exercise. And so it's that thing that my life is pointing towards. Yeah.
Wow. Thank
Hmm.
you. And thanks for playing along to this
Oh,
cocktail
absolutely.
Thursday. I'm always amazed how different guests come up, with different things, but somehow they're all related. So that's
Hmm.
wonderful. So as we wrap this up, is there anything to share with listeners where they can find you? I'll put the link to the workshop into the show notes, but anything else you'd like them to go to check out or me to include in the show notes so people can find you?
This world is so big, but listeners can always find me on LinkedIn. I'm Lizette Warner. was spelled with a Z and two T's, but it'll probably be in your show notes. But I'm on LinkedIn and I have a newsletter on LinkedIn. It's called Your Growth Down to a Science. So if your listeners want to know more about me, about my work, about the volume check, about the capacity code, follow me on LinkedIn, connect with me there. I'm always available and happy to connect with folks. And especially if you've got an event or someone listening is looking for a speaker, then connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to have that conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And yeah, thanks for taking the time and have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thanks, Maggie.
That's it for today. If this stirred something in you, don't just sit on it. Do something, anything, today, right now. Take one small intentional step toward more freedom, flow, and fun. And see where the ride takes you. If this hit home, follow the show, share it with a friend, or leave a review. That's how we ripple this energy further. Want to go deeper? Head over to mindset/mastery.ch for coaching, tools, and next steps. Until next time, trust your gut, stay curious, and keep playing it by your rules. Bye for now.